Good afternoon, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Google+. This is Rich again, back for your second video blog of the day for Thursday, September 8, 2016, around 5:09 in the afternoon in Billerica, Massachusetts. Been a mix of sun and clouds today, but the sun's breaking through, which is pretty good. It's shooting up the temperatures. Tomorrow's going to be more humid and close to 90. Some news to report. The New York Mets have signed former NFL quarterback Tim Tebow to a minor league deal. ESPN has announced they're going to be doing a 30 for 30 podcast next season. And also ESPN has announced that Stage Steel will be sharing hosting duties of NBA Countdown with ESPN Sports Nation's host Michelle Beadle. This is pretty good. Michelle Beadle rocks and has probably the nicest legs on ESPN besides Sarah Walsh. And that's about it on the news. My second video blog subject of the day is about my take on fantasy sports. Fantasy sports has been a big business over the past several years, and it rakes in millions upon millions of dollars. Background on fantasy sports. It started over 35 years ago when a group of friends would play rotisserie baseball games. That means they would draft teams of the baseball players who are playing. They would go to form dream teams, and they would use Statomatic, and they would it was called rotisserie teams because they would do it while the chicken was rotisserie. So that's how fantasy sports came alive. And for years, fantasy sports was in preview magazines of the Sporting News and Street and Smith and Out to Sports. You could put a fantasy team of baseball, basketball, hockey, and football, and they would have a certain amount of a salary cap, and you would try to vote your dream teams, but you would have to do it within a budget, and you would have to send in so many dollars, and then you would play the dream teams to see which ones win, and you would win prizes. Like in the early 1990s, they started to have fantasy football shows on who the players to look out for each and every week. And when the .com, the World Wide Web exploded in the 1990s, fantasy sports went online for fantasy football. Fantasy football leagues formed on ESPN.com and FoxSports.com and then CBSSportsline.com and others, and it got to be more popular than ever before. And for years, ESPN would have a fantasy sports show during the football season. And in the 2000s and 2010s, there were fantasy magazines each year for fantasy football and fantasy basketball and fantasy baseball and fantasy hockey. And a lot of people checked up this who should they draft for their fantasy teams. Even several restaurants got involved in fantasy sports, especially fantasy football. Hooters every year would have fantasy football drafts at the local Hooters. They would draft the players they wanted on their team, and they came up with good team nicknames. And in the 2010s to now, they have a lot of like new websites, fantasy stuff like DraftKings.com and FanDuel.com, and you could make up your own team names, and there's prizes which you have to pay a fee, and the prizes are, if you win your league, you could win up to $1 million. That's a lot of money. But many states are looking into that if that's illegal gambling, because some states you can't gamble at all unless if it's in a casino. And some states says it's okay. Some states say it isn't. Fantasy sports is very, very good because you could do your own teams and you could face off against your friends or acquaintances to see who has the best team. Many people have fantasy drafts on their own every year. They go to their friend's house or a restaurant and they draft the players and they have a good time. The most popular fantasy sports is fantasy football, because fantasy football, NFL only plays once a week, so you could pay attention for the stats, which is easy. If you do the other sports like basketball and hockey, they play several times a week, so you really have to, follow those sports the most. And baseball, it's almost every day they play, so you have to really pay attention who's on your team, if they had a good night or a bad night. I've only did fantasy sports one time back in 2001 when I signed up for a free fantasy team at the old Hooters of Boston. I didn't win anything, but it was fun. And I'm not really big on fantasy sports because it's not my thing, but it's a very, very good hobby. And these are and a lot of big sports fans do it just to see who they could have on a dream team, their own dream team, and sometimes they come up with very crazy names. That's about it on fantasy sports. I will be back with the third and final video blog of the night, which will be about my personality profile. Tonight's personality profile will be about Good Day Fox 4 in Dallas co-host in the morning, Lauren Prisbel, who used to work for WHDH Channel 7 in Boston for a few years. Keep calm, everybody. I'm a Julie Bennett guy. Molly Roseblood of WCCO accent has nice legs. Elizabeth Hatso, so stunning, she's the best. Amy Sweezy's awesome Amy. Linda Church of WPIX Channel 11 in New York is such a cougar, and she has the best legs in New York City. She should be a fashion model. And Barbara Gibbs of ABC 11 has a sweet southern accent. Have a good day. Bye now.